Zoom with our next candidate, Republican candidate for the Senator Vince Borja, kind of looking like Michael St. Nicholas's dinga. I mean, look at that. Just, I see it. Well, Vince.
Good morning, Sabina and Chris.
Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
This morning.
Right on this.
But you're not the first person to said that. I don't think I look like Mike St. Nicholas, but
let's just start there.
Feelings, though, Chris, that you put me. It hurts my feelings that you kind of put me in the same category as Mike St. Nicholas.
No. He's saying that you look like him. He didn't say you act like him.
And let's just start there, man. Vince, let's just start there. As a Republican candidate for senator, where are you kind of chiming in on this congressional race that's going on? And, being new to party politics, how's this been for you?
So, truthfully, it takes, when I, just the way things are going between Underwood and Mike St. Nicholas, it reminds me of so I helped run the youth committee for Angel Santos and Jose Terlahi when they ran for governor in 1998, and it's panning out to be that type of election, because I remember just all the punches what was it, I think Tom and Lou, it was Angel Santos and Jose Terlahi, and it was a very very dirty election. And so for me, that it just brings me back to that day. It was fun, don't get me wrong, but I think that, I guess for me, it's more, we talk about transparency and accountability all the time. And I think that that's the message from one side of the party. And so I agree with it. And so we hope that that's something I guess Mike can hash out, but yeah, it really does. It's interesting to watch, and I think Guam, that's they call politics the sport of Guam. So that's my take on it. It really does just bring me back to those days, and so I like to grab my popcorn when the press conferences come out and hear what they have to say.
I'm right there with you, Vincent. I think that's I used to host those HITA rallies, so I think that's a pretty interesting common ground.
So you were
a Democrat.
Yeah, a Democrat, and you're running Republican now.
Yeah, so that was my next question. How the hell did you go from supporting Angel Santos and Vito Terlahi? I mean, this is as like pro-Chamorro left as you can go, to running for senator as a Republican and holding hands with Jim Moylan. It's like a 180 to me.
Well, I mean, I think the values are still there. I started with Chamorro Nation, of course. Camped out at Adelup with the Chamorro Nation. Always been a supporter of that, and help with the push for Angel Santos. But I think how I ended up moving over, I wouldn't even call it moving over or switching over to the Republican side, is for me, right, coming from my humble beginnings and where I grew up, where I came from in life, and going and looking at ways to create opportunities so that I can live a better life compared to what I came from. I just always, it taught me to be very conservative, and it also taught me that the government is not. When you allow the government to hold your hand, I guess is what we'll call it. And I'm not saying that's what the Democrats do, but at the same time, for me, it's more about how can the government help me be independent, right? Versus how can the government help me and hold my hand. So I think that's where I lean a little. I lean more to the right, I guess, as in my political views. And and so that's kind of how, when I decided to, when I talked about running and looking and made the decision, I really, I guess that's kind of what I had to look at. And that's how I ended up, I'm a
and I think it was,
as well.
Was it probably
so it helps.
Part two, a perfect storm of the Republicans needed some candidates to fill out their slate. Vince, I did some stories on you when you were working at the University of Guam in terms of you maybe possibly campaigning a little early, but that's not the issue I want to bring up. I kind of want to bring up that when I asked people about you, because I didn't know anything about you other than you used to do Toastmasters, but when I asked people about you, you talk about the humble beginnings. That's kind of what I got. I spoke to someone who was very close to your family, and they had talked about your upbringing, man, and I got to say that it kind of sounded like a lot of people I know's upbringing is that. And so can we talk about that? Because we're hearing this too much. People out here are running for senator talking about their humble beginnings and they went to academy or whatever. You know what I mean? So I want to just, how humble are your beginnings?
Well, you know, I was raised by my grandmother primarily. My mom was around, but my grandmother was my guardian, I guess. My dad was here and there, but my dad was caught up in drugs. You know, in fact, when I was a senior in high school, my dad passed away. Drugs, you know, and so that, and then just, you know, my grandma raised me on public assistance. You know, I mean, I learned the public transit system, or the mass transit system, back in high school because I wanted to, you know, I was a runner. I ran away all the time. I mean, I lived on the streets a couple of days as a teenager. You know, my dad's sisters pretty much were pretty much more like my mom because my grandma was mean, you know, raised from, you know, during the post-war and just her upbringing. So she was very tough, and just coming from that, and you know, even thinking back on days where honestly, I mean, I would come home from school and be starving and hungry and not sure whether or not I was gonna have dinner that night. But coming from that, you know, house to house with my dad's family members, and then I think I turned my life around when I think it was like, you know, I mean, for those who don't know, I actually did 5 years in high school. One of those years I really wasn't there because I was always skipping. And it took for me to get arrested actually when I was in 9th grade for skipping school, got caught at Matapang Beach, and they went to court, and when the judge said, if you don't go to school, I'm going to put you in jail. And having family members who were in and out of jail, I didn't want to do that. And so I went to different schools. Actually, I went to, at the time, there was only Southern High, GW, Sanchez, did that. But turned my life around. I think my 3rd year in high school, graduated. My dad passed away because of drugs. I felt, because I'm the oldest of my siblings, and then again, it's my siblings with my dad, not my dad and my mom. And so I thought I needed to do something to help my grandmother financially, you know, because it was still public assistance. And that was at the time when welfare was kind of, GovBomb wasn't paying for welfare anymore. So I joined the Army. And I think, for me, did I really want to join the Army? No, but it was probably the best thing that I did to help my grandmother. And it helped pay for my education. I was able to get a bachelor's degree and 2 master's degrees. I'm currently working on my doctorate's degree. So when we talk about humble beginnings, I grew up poor. And so to go from that to where I am today, I think that's one thing that we need to bring, not that experience, but I think that we need to bring that connection that we need and how we serve and how we introduce policy, because I think that's where the disconnection is and how we're moving Guam forward. Because I definitely don't want our generation, our children, to be forced to make the decision I had to make when I was that age, which was to work entry-level jobs or join the military. I think people should join the military because it's their calling and they want to serve and they want to do, they want to serve Guam and they want to serve America, but not because there's no opportunity for Guam, or they have to work 2 or 3 jobs. Like most people who work 2 or 3 jobs and still not be able to get health insurance. So most look to the military, and that's, we brag about how we have the highest enlistment rate per capita, but it's a good thing, when we demand for services and we demand for the federal government to help us out. But that says a lot for what we've done to prepare our island for our past generations and as we move forward for generations to come.
Vince, it's, when you talk about that disconnect, right? As someone, humble beginnings, you grew up poor, but when we asked about you running as a Republican, you had mentioned that you don't think that the government should be out here holding people's hands. That being said, and I share very common, beginnings with you. I know that not everybody is someone like you or, has the ability to pick themselves up. So at what point do you think the government is kind of responsible for holding people's hands? Because God knows we don't want to just bat their hand away and, leave them down there and say, hey, Vince did it. What's your problem?
So I think primarily, as a government, I think that we provide, when you look at all the problems and you look at it all ties down to one thing, right? The economy And for me, it's how do we create a community where their crime rates are down, where people are making decent wages. It's we have a good economy, right? A good economy. You look at this, and I can speak from experience when we talk about a lot of the socioeconomic status or the socioeconomic problems. We look at their opportunity. What opportunity do they have, right? And that's this one of the problems. And then you also got to look at mental health, right? Because when I worked with WestCare and did a lot of the worked with some of the social programs there, right? We talk to a lot of the teens. When you look at suicide, right, it's coping. When you look at the veteran issues in suicide, it's how are they coping? When you look at the drug addicts or the crime offenders, right, it's usually tied to drugs. And for me, I think we need to look at how we're teaching people to cope or what programs are out there. And I think a lot of that has to do with education. And I think that's the role the government can play versus when we identify there's a problem, right? It's, well, what program or where can we find money to create a program that's going to fix that problem, right? We need to implement more forward thinking and look at ways. So we look at the root of the problem and look at ways. And we understand that. I understand that you can't, there's not going to be a one fixed solution that's going to make the problem go away, but it's what can we do that's going to have an effect, over the long term versus what can we do now to get them the help, right? Because when I was trying to understand recidivism on Guam, and you look at there's programs to get these people back out into the community. Having people close to me who went through that program and got out and went and got jobs, I think there's a gap that we need to fix there, and the follow up on ensuring that these guys have that that support. So that's what I mean when we talk about minimal government support, not government support, but we instead of giving handouts, like how about we give a hand up, right? And I think that's the role the government plays.
Mm-hmm. So if elected, if you could just, I guess, what will be name a bill that you plan on introducing?
Well, right now, when I was thinking about that question, because that's a common question, I think for me, I'm on board for a part-time legislature, and those are one of the part-time legislature roll back the BPT. The BPT is important because when we, with the pandemic now and trying to keep the economy going with what's left, is how do we, what can we do to help these businesses stay in business? And so doing that, but I think what's more important than introducing a bill, you'll hear that all the time when introduce the bill to do this. I think what we need to look at is what are we doing with our resources? We know right now that obviously the economy is sinking. Government coffers are going to continue to decline. So what can we do to provide the basic services, right, that the government should provide, right, with what we have? So I think it's looking at that and doing a top-down review of the government finances, looking at what resources we have, and then going from there to help improve, to improve what we do and how we govern and how we provide services. And I think that's more important than, for me, when in office is working with those stakeholders to see how we can provide the basic services without having to make cuts, right?
You got 30 seconds to close.
I think, thank you, Chris and Sabina, for this opportunity. Thank you for the people of Guam for giving me their attention, I think now, but when you look at, when it's time to go to the ballot and make your vote, I ask for your support. Just like everybody else, I understand the problems. I've been there. I understand what it's like to be hungry. I understand how it's like to struggle. As a small business owner, I understand the pains right now, especially with the pandemic. So I think I'd like to ask for your vote and your confidence. And if given the opportunity, I hope to bring that voice that has been missing, I think, in the legislature and from our leadership. And so thank you, Chris and Sabina, for this opportunity. And thank you, Guam.
Thank you, Vince. Good luck. 9:35. We'll keep it going in the Zoom room with KUAM News' decision 2020. On the way, we have Republican candidate Don Edkulani.